Welcome, everybody. We are back on neutrality studies, and today I'm joined once more by Larry C. Johnson, a former CIA analyst and member of the group Veteran Intelligence Professional for Sanity. Larry, welcome back.
Thanks, Buck 12. Good to be with you, man.
I recently was deleted from YouTube for 16 hours, and it was a really dramatic kind of experience for me, even though I knew this could happen at any time. It is really, really disturbing when it does. And then my channel was put back up. And then in the process of that, I learned actually that I had missed that your own channel was deleted by YouTube 1.5 years ago, and it was not put back on. And that kind of, I mean, I apologize. It didn't pop up on my radar. Also because you're still around on YouTube, on many other channels. But can you tell me a little bit what happened to you like 18 months ago?
Yeah, I just, one day, just like you wake up and you go to get on the channel and boom, it's gone. And just notice, hey, they accused me of being guilty of hate speech.
Yeah.
And then I said, what did I say? What was the offending video? Oh, they won't tell you that. So there's absolutely no due process. So that I was fortunate. I got in contact with Jeffrey Warnick, who is the owner of BitChute, and Jeffrey is firmly committed to non-censorship. He won't allow any kind of pornography. He won't allow anything that deals with children on his channel. But politically, if you want to argue that the Holocaust was not real, he'll allow that, even though he's Jewish. But he will allow that. Things that offend him. But he's really made some strides forward. And so I had no recourse. Just, I was pleasantly surprised to hear that you at least got an answer back from him and they finally reconsidered. But in my case, no, it was a death blow. And I had years of video that I unfortunately had not backed up.
Yeah, that's the other thing that is so absolutely hurtful. If this option or if this possibility was not on the radar, then I mean, a lot of people put videos up, and since it's always there, the belief is that it always will be, but it isn't. So
right.
When this happened, I mean, did you have the chance to at least click on the little appeal button?
Oh yeah, I did, and multiple times. And it's just like, they come back and basically say, go pound sand.
But yeah, the problem is they have absolute control, total control over the channel. So I keep saying the channels are nothing but a checkbox in a very large spreadsheet somewhere at a Google HQ. And they can take away the checkbox anytime they want, but they have different policies. So the policy that I was accused of infringing was spam and deceptive practices. The policy you were accused of is hate speech. Did they of course, they didn't provide any example, I suppose, of your...
Not at all. And it's one thing if say, hey, you've this one particular video that was considered hateful, and then you give me the chance, well, I can either take it down, I can go on and re-record it and try to clarify, but I wasn't, if the only, quote, hate I was engaged in was hating the genocide that was happening to the Palestinian people. But I wasn't responding to that by making anti-Jewish remarks. I've always made a point that I speak out against Zionism because Zionism is not Judaism. There are Jews that embrace the concept of Zionism, just as there are Christians who embrace the concept of Zionism. But again, there was no recourse, no appeal, nothing.
Do you think that you were the victim of an earlier regime of censorship in the US? And so let me explain this just a little bit. And it's all based on speculation because we simply don't have any insight into this process, in these processes. But what we have seen under the Biden administration and what we have seen under the COVID, regime that emerged was that it is now proven that there was influence, government influence directly into the social media sphere, right? The Twitter files luckily exposed that. And thank you, Elon Musk, for actually making that available. And thank you, Matt Taibbi and so on, for actually working through these documents that show how they created a system, right, in which the White House basically then sent emails and flagged content that then Twitter would selectively like work on and either suppress or take out. In YouTube, what we saw was several channels that were taken down during the Biden era, and yours seems to be one of those. And this kind of has changed. I mean, at least in my perception, under the Trump administration, this has calmed down. What is your observation on this? You know, the last 5-6 years of this up and down.
Well, it's calmed in some ways, and it's gotten worse in others. So now if you criticize Israel, if you criticize the conduct of the war against the Palestinians, that becomes a charge of that you're engaged with anti-Semitic speech. And what's really crazy about it is you get people like Max Blumenthal accused of being an anti-Semite.
As a Jew, yeah.
Yeah. Same for Aaron Mate, who's Jewish. Jeffrey Sachs.
And
Jewish.
His dad, Gabor Mate, Jeffrey Sachs. You know, actually, there's a lot of very, very prominent anti-Zionist Jews on YouTube, you know, including John Mearsheimer.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is, there's just no, so in that regard, I think it's still just as bad. It can still be used. In fact, we learned yesterday that Scott Ritter.
Yes.
He was debanked.
Yeah.
The Citizens Bank took his money. The problem is he's supposed to get it back in 2 weeks, but it's just all of a sudden they can say, okay, we're no longer going to allow you to bank with us. And again, there's no legal recourse. They pull the plug on you. And it turned out that the plug pulling came from the Trump administration.
Did it?
Yes. Yeah.
Do we know anything about that, or what can you share with us?
When he was tracking it, and he actually called the Office of Foreign Asset Control, OFAC, and they indicated that it had actually been made at a higher level within the federal government. So again, they were targeting him, and that's but they can do the same to me. They can do they did try to do it to you. Again, to accuse you of spam and deceptive practices is like, sorry, you got one of the most anti-spam shows on the internet.
I am still actually, in my own case, I still believe that this was a genuine IT glitch, in the sense that what we've seen over the last 6 months is an unprecedented rise in AI videos on the internet. And we've had AI pretending to be Mearsheimer, pretending to be Jeffrey Sachs, pretending to be Alexander Mercurius. You were also impersonated?
Oh, man. And there are at least three channels out there with me.
So there is real AI spam going on, and YouTube must do something against it. And it's just ridiculously easy to make a channel. So these bots, they create these channels. It must be a constant cat and mouse game, but in the thousands, if not tens of thousands of channels a day is my guesstimate. So they must do something. And I actually have another project running through which I know that a year ago it was really easy to create a channel in anyone's name. I mean, I work on a project where we run channels for others, and there was no problem. And now, whenever we try to create a new channel, it immediately gets taken down with exactly that message. So I do think my case might be one of YouTube's spam filter going haywire at the moment, which is of course very bad for them. And the problem is that they don't give human interaction in order to resolve this issue. But in my case, I believe it's an honest mistake. Whereas in your case, and what happened to Scott Ritter and so on, is just probably outright interference from above.
Well, and let's not forget what Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi, what they found out. There are a significant number of former CIA employees sitting in top positions at places like Google, YouTube, Facebook.
Yeah,
Just a coincidence.
and one must not underestimate the power of a phone call, of saying like, "Hey, by the way, just call your guys," and then the guys downstream will remove the checkbox, and that's it, because you're then at the short end of the doomstick, where you can't do anything against this.
Right. Yeah. If they get to the place where they start saying, okay, this person is banned, then anybody that hosts this person will be, their channel can be taken down. I mean, that's where I think the next step is going in the censorship. What is, you're pretty young compared to me, and I recall, I first started doing punditry back in 1994, so 32 years ago, and at that time, alternative voices were allowed. I used to do CNN's Crossfire quite a bit, back to when they actually had opposing points of view. I debated Alan Dershowitz on the whole Jonathan Pollard spy business. I learned how to defeat Alan Dershowitz's laugh at him, because he got so. I started. He said something like Jonathan Pollard wasn't spying, and I just started laughing, and he got mad. Says, "Stop laughing at me." Well, it's that 14-year-old in me says, "Oh, you want me to stop?" So I laughed more, and it really irritated him. But at least we could have two different positions. And that continued up until the start of, we got into the start of the Gulf War, 2000, or the invasion of Iraq, 2003. And back then, PBS, the public broadcast service here in the United States, on the Jim Lehrer News Hour, they had something, they called it the Three Colonels. And so they had three former military guys. One of them was a friend of mine, Pat Lang. Pat had been the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency's Middle East Division. I forget who the other two characters were, but at least you had different points of view that were allowed with respect to the war early on. But after that, you weren't allowed to really criticize the U.S. effort. The real hit on me came with the Barack Obama, rise of Barack Obama. When I started criticizing on air Barack Obama and his associations, previous associations with, known terrorists, Bill Ayers, or who had been charged with, I'm not using that as a pejorative term, he had been charged with terrorist acts. I then got cut off. I was no longer welcome on air. And then we saw with the start, same with the coup in the Maidan, and now what we've seen with the Israeli actions against the Palestinians in the wake of October 7th, with respect to Iran. No alternative voice is allowed. In fact, I was just watching, someone was talking about the thousands of Americans that have been killed by Iran. Thousands. Well, go to any AI search engine and ask the question: how many American civilians has Iran killed in terrorist acts or direct attacks? The answer I got was 0 to maybe 50 to 100. They weren't sure. So, there's no good data on that point. But if it was thousands, you'd think, we got to, we have to take that into account. I asked the same question about the Iranian proxies. So they say, okay, well, Iran may not be doing it, but they got all these proxies that are killing civilians. And I draw the distinction between civilians and military, because, if you're sitting in a restaurant eating a pizza, you shouldn't have to worry about someone wearing a suicide belt coming and blowing themselves up, because you're not a threat of any kind. But even on that statistic, the number of people killed by Iranian proxies was, 600 to 1,000. It was very low. Similarly, I then asked the question about military deaths. And the number there was 1,000, because they were. I was speaking to a retired general on Tuesday, and he insisted that there were thousands of killed in Iraq. But actually, when you go back and look at the total number of killed, it was like 4,600 Americans over 12 years. But the ones that are actually killed attributed to Iranian proxies was about 600. Now, I'm not saying that Iran didn't do those things, but I'm just saying it's not true to portray Iran as this murderous country that has been on a rampage killing Americans. Because the other part of what I wrote a piece the other day pointing out that actually, if you look at it in terms of how many Iranians has the United States killed, either directly or indirectly. On the indirect front, using proxies, we are the ones who encouraged Saddam Hussein to invade Iran, and then we provided Saddam Hussein with the precursor chemicals that were used in mustard gas attacks on Iranians. You can make the case that the United States is responsible for 500,000 dead Iranian soldiers, minimum. And then you get into the civilian category. So, but my point in all this is that the way the information is managed and handled, it's designed specifically to gaslight the public.
And I mean, you formed together with Ray McGovern this group of veteran intelligence professionals,
Sanity, yeah,
right? I mean, as a way to share this very crucial information that not that the other sides don't do bad things, but the amount of bad things that are happening from home that end up killing and meaning and destroying lives in the millions abroad is extraordinary, and it's not a conspiracy theory to say that. This is just what the data shows, and actually this is also what the politicians say. I mean, Madeleine Albright asked about the her tenure and the what they did with Iraq back then, and she goes like, yeah, worth it, right? About babies in Iraq and to get the 1 million or so killed, yeah, worth it. And this idea, we criticized it a lot. This neocon ideology of, oh, if a couple of tens of thousands have to die, well, that's just what it is because it's a test, right? And we criticized that, and that if that becomes impossible to do, then well, we're at the end stage of the almighty empire of totalitarianism, actually.
Well, let's just look at the record of the last 60 years and total up how many people from other countries that Russia killed, how many people from other countries that China killed,
right,
and how many people from other countries that we, the United States, killed. We are the most murderous country in the world over the last 60 years. We've been responsible for the deaths of more people since the end of World War II than any other country. And we've been on a constant war footing. And, we can pretend that, we can say, well, we're just killing bad people. Remember that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger where he was an undercover spy and his wife, Jamie Lee Curtis, didn't know.
And I love that movie, yeah.
Yeah, and she says,
true lies,
true lies. True lies. Do you kill people? Only the bad ones. They deserve, only the bad ones. Well, that's been sort of our mantra. But the fact is quite otherwise. And we have inflicted enormous suffering on civilians all around the globe.
I mean, the sick thing of this mentality is, of course, and this is not just the United States. It goes for the West in general, and the killing is, of course, an international integrated system, including, of course, Switzerland, banking and financing and whatnot, global capital that then ends up creating the bombs that are killing all of these children in Gaza and the West Bank too, and so on. By the way,
right.
And this has been going on for a long time. I mean, the entire North American continent would have a different skin color if it wasn't for that kind of approach. And what we see, and just look at any kind of old Western movie, the Indians They were the brutals. They attack the innocent settlers who just want to live their life, and then they want to go and rape and plunder and everything. So the cavalry must step in and defeat the bad guys, right? It's just over and over. Whoever needs to be eliminated is made the bad guy. It's relatively simple, isn't it?
Well, and that's where propaganda comes in. And we live in a double-edged sword environment. On the one hand, let's deal with the positive. There's more information, independent information out there now for people to get easily than it was in the past. I mean, in the Soviet Union, they had samizdat. People had to sit down and actually write out books and letters and articles, and those were circulated by hand. Well, now we can do it electronically and do it instantaneously and do it in volumes that are just unbelievable. You can reach literally millions of people in ways that were not possible 30, 40 years ago. When I did a little bit of I did an 8-week, let's call it an internship in the Directorate of Operations on the Afghan task force working propaganda, what they called covert action. And it involved producing movies, documentaries that present a particular point of view, as well as planting articles in news magazines and newspapers. The funniest one for me was there was this French guy named Jean-Jacques Servan-Schreiber who he hated the CIA. And he was convinced that the CIA was, behind all sorts of nefarious things, which it was. But we planted articles in his magazine and he didn't know it. So, I've seen that, and I can only imagine what's being done today with bots and with all of these social media accounts, which, that goes, we just saw an illustration of that with respect to the attempt to foment a revolution in Iran using, thousands of Starlink, servers of the courtesy of Elon Musk. Now, Musk didn't make a donation. That was purchased, and that was purchased by the CIA, I'm sure. One of the intelligence outfits using a front company. But the point of this is technology also gives the government enormous power. It can shut down the internet. It can turn it off. It can shut it, like in your case, in my case, you can just eliminate you. A virtual elimination as opposed to actually killing you. But they can make sure that you have limited presence. That's why it's important that there are other alternative sites like BitChute, which now provide it's like one port in the storm, a safe haven.
There's two approaches to this, right? One is to say, like, it's a lost cause. Let's abandon it and go BitChute, go Rumble, try to work on alternatives, which I think is a very important approach. The other approach is to say, like, no, we're going to fight this. We're going to unionize. We're going to try to do collective bargaining. We're doing political action against government censorship and so on. I think both need to be done at the same time. But what is your view of the chances we've got to kind of preserve the good parts of this free and open speech and liberal environment while fighting what it creates on the other end, which is death and destruction and despair on people that the system doesn't like?
Well, I think it's overall there are risks with the system, but the advantages far outweigh the risks in my view. And again, one of the I call it like one of the blessings of it is, you're on the other side of the globe,
right?
But we've now developed a relationship, and I can go down the list of people that I have developed, and they've become genuine friends. And some I've been fortunate to meet in person, like Professor Mohammed Marandi. I call him the Virginian, because he was actually born in Virginia. I interviewed him and this this kid. I call him a kid because he's the age of my son. So, Nima Al-Khurshid.
Right.
And Nima's an engineer, but he has a podcast out of Brazil.
Mhm.
But he's gone back to Iran to visit family, first time in 12 years. So I had them both on. And so I was telling Mohammed, you're not a real Iranian. You fess up, man. You're born in America. You're Bruce Springsteen, born in America, not born in the USA. But developing relationships like that with Pepe Escobar, Alistair Crook, and then just the number, like on my own blog, my blog and my Substack, I'm reaching people around the world.
Right.
Every country in Europe, many in Africa, several in Asia, and that sort of, and you begin to sort of get to know people over the course of that. So that's one of the amazing things now about the internet. You can really create a global community.
That is
Yeah.
true. That is true. And you can connect a lot of people who otherwise would feel pretty lonely. This is
Yeah.
one of the things that I hear quite a lot in feedback is thank you for your channel. It makes me feel less it takes away this feeling that I'm going insane, because no, there's other people who also have our interpretation of what's going on, because it's really difficult if you're surrounded by people who have this mainstream view and that's all you see. Then you start questioning your own mental capacity to look at reality.
Yeah, there's a musical that made into a movie called 1776. And it was about producing the Declaration of Independence. And in one scene, the character played by that is playing John Adams is singing he's in a belfry and he's singing, "Is anybody there? Does anybody care? Does anybody see what I see?" And he was expressing this, that he felt isolated and alone with what he was seeing, but he felt it was important to fight for. And there are people like that all around the world where you feel like you're spitting into a hurricane. But then you find out, hey, I'm not alone. There are others out there that share this vision, share this view. And, and in my particular case, what I'm trying to do is stop the killing.
Yeah.
We need to stop the killing. We keep the American approach in particular is that we have to view others as enemies.
Yep.
You're either a friend or foe. And it's like, that's the wrong dichotomy to erect. Let's recognize that we have neighbors. That doesn't mean it because I can get along with my neighbor. It doesn't mean I have to invite him to all my family celebrations. It doesn't mean we're necessarily the best of friends, but I don't also treat them like they're an enemy, that I have to, when I walk out of my house, I have to have my gun drawn, prepared to shoot them.
Yeah.
And that's, right now, the United States is just like if you've ever been around a 3 or 4-year-old child and you give them like a plastic hammer, everything looks like a nail at that point. You have to bang them on. Everything gets hit with the hammer. That's unfortunately been U.S. foreign policy, that instead of finding, a middle ground, and the same can be said for Israel. They say, well, what should have Israel done after October 7th? Well, very easy. One, they had a lot of sympathy around the world with them, so they could have moved immediately to get the financial support to Hamas shut down. There were so many diplomatic avenues open to them that if their goal was really to defeat Hamas and get justice and get the hostages released, they could have pursued that, but they didn't, because they didn't want to. This is all about creating a reason to physically uproot, force the Palestinians out, strip them of their land so that the Zionists could take it. And, that's why I keep coming back. It's like we've dodged the bullet so far with respect to the attempted regime change in Iran. The U.S. was going to strike militarily last night, and it got called off. I don't know why fully, but
I hope it's really called off, because it would be a very Trumpian thing to call it off and 2 days later to strike with even more force because ha ha ha, you believed this, stupid idiots, now you're all dead. He would laugh at that. He did laugh at this before. So I really hope that something happened that
well, people can monitor it for themselves. Right now, there's a carrier task force group headed for that area, for the Persian Gulf. It should, if Trump's serious about not attacking, he should order it turned around. So far, no order has been given to turn it around. So this is, I still think we're on the U.S. policy is going to find another excuse or reason to attack Iran. This was actually a very complex operation that started on December 28th. December 28th was the date that the Iranian currency crashed. And that crash, dramatic devaluation, is what prompted the protests in the street, and by a wide variety of Iranians. So that was deliberately engineered. I can't prove this, but I look at it and I know this is exactly what happened. This is not the first time we've ever seen a wealthy individual. Hell, George Soros did it to England, where you could engineer the rapid devaluation of a currency, short it, and make some money off of it. But this was deliberately engineered. It's like the economic crisis is like the spark on some dry kindling. And then all you got to do is bring in the gasoline and the other accelerants to make the fire bigger. And so once that started, then the groups that the CIA and Mossad had contacts with, both among the Kurds, among the group called MEK, the group PMOI, the People's Mujahideen of Iran, and the Mujahideen al-Khalq, MEK. Out in Baluchistan, you had other groups, and then you funneled weapons into those people. And then communication directed them, go shoot, go kill, go create violence. They were trying to stoke a level of violence throughout the society, so that when the U.S. carried out this military strike that was going to happen yesterday, the government would have collapsed. But what happened is the government got on top of it. They were able to locate all of these Starlink devices that were being used to coordinate this covert action and shut it down. And they did so with the assistance of the Russians and the Chinese, reportedly. So
the dirty war, this going behind the scenes and like trying to infiltrate society, everything that the United States is so hypersensitive and accuses everybody else of doing to them is what the CIA has been, of course, it's bread and butter ever since, ever since it was the OSS.
Yes.
The thing is, this is highly sophisticated, and we know by now, the good thing is that at least some of these activities are accessible in one way or another. So Ukrainian professor in Canada, Ivan Kachanovsky, who wrote, in my view, a very close to definite book on the Maidan killings, that proves just through the testimony and whatever, look, these shots were fired from the side of the protesters, and this was an intentional way of just killing on both sides, so that you can create the social chaos that then allowed for the regime change to take place the way it did, and we have that on record, and we have people like Jeffrey Sachs who coincidentally were there, and so on. And so this is not even it's not new at all. I mean, these are well proven, well documented methods to a regime change and ultimately control and dominate other countries.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is I find it very funny that the United States had such a meltdown over alleged Russian interference in the 2016 election, when we have been overthrowing government after government after government since 1947, with the creation of the CIA and the number of regime changing political leaders and forcibly and through subversion. That's been our bread and butter, and as far as the CIA is concerned. And so when it's done to us, all of a sudden we're saying, but this is outrageous. Well, maybe, I don't see Russia and China as examples who are out working as much as the United States has, not even close, on changing regimes and forcibly removing leaders. I mean, just like what the U.S. just did in Venezuela. Hell, we'll go there and kidnap. I was listening earlier today. Judge Napolitano hosted a debate between the comedian Dave Smith, who's a libertarian, and Dinesh D'Souza. And D'Souza was making the argument that the United States going into a sovereign country like Venezuela and kidnapping their president was not an act of war. And his entire rationale is because Venezuela's small and can't fight back. That's called the law of the jungle. It's outrageous.
I mean, this is, if he says it's not illegal under international law, then he doesn't know what that is. The funny thing, and I just want to make this point here, some people say like, oh, this is the end of international law. No, it's not. International law is shaped and formed and transformed by the acts of states, but also by the reactions of other states to it. Best case in point, even though Israel for the last 60 years has been able to flout each and every UN resolution that came its way, the new resolutions keep coming its way that still uphold that part of the law, and Israel gets angry because it realizes, oh, it cannot change majority opinion, because majority opinion depends on the majority. The United States, in this sense, is not the majority. It can break the law. It can do these things, but it cannot change the way that these norms actually work. Whether they have an impact or not is a different question, but they will continue beyond this. So, I mean, it's still a highly illegal act.
Oh, no, I agree. It is. Look, the purpose of international law, and I guess this goes back to the Treaty of Westphalia, was sort of the first major movement in this regards in the West, is to create predictability, because you want to know whether it's like if you deposit your money in the bank, you want to know that your money's going to be there tomorrow, that someone's not going to be allowed to come in and take it or steal it. And this is where, the conventions have grown up over time that, and it goes back to the Magna Carta with King John, where all the wealthy people got together and said, hey, you can't keep coming and taking from us just according to whatever your personal feelings are that day. There has to be some law, some structure, some things you can't do, or some procedures you have to follow if you want to, it's out of chaos and criminality that you come up with, say, hey, we need to have some laws to establish some boundaries, to create some conventions so that we don't end up killing each other.
Yeah, and don't forget self-interest. I mean, self-interest is, in my view, one of the primary motivations behind the development of international law. And one of the ways, we often look at the top level. Oh, what do the presidents do? What do the people in power do? But the other question is like, what happens on the lower level? A good example for the impact of international law is the military manuals. Where, the manual that the United States uses in order to educate its own troops of what they can and cannot do. And those manuals, they tend to reflect international law very, very closely.
Very much so.
You can take, it's for granted. The U.S. military manual will never say like any soldier of the U.S. can go and abduct any president it wants, because the U.S. wouldn't want soldiers to take that decision, right? Right. You need the soldiers and the collective to follow certain kind of rules. The leaders, of course, they take themselves out on that and have special permissions. But still, overall, there is a very large consensus for the rules that have developed over a long time, which is why we are so shocked when they now are actually broken. But I would still say what we are seeing at the moment is rather our dismay about these rules being broken, rather than the okay, go ahead, everything's fine.
Yeah, well, this is where I think the events of the last 2 weeks, so from December 28th until, let's see, we're on the 15th now, so until January 12th, those 15 days, roughly a little over 2 weeks, have fundamentally changed how Russia and China are looking at the United States.
Yeah, probably.
Because it's not just that the U.S. was acting outside of international law on a whole variety of areas, but also Trump, not only Donald Trump, but key advisors to Donald Trump were boldly saying, hey, international law means nothing. It's whoever's the strongest. We're the strongest. We're going to do whatever the hell we want. So, when you got somebody making that kind of declaration, you got to say, okay, now we know what we're up against. Don't make the mistake of believing, oh, they didn't mean that. They absolutely meant it. And so from that standpoint, you can't trust, even if they make a written agreement, you can't trust they're going to abide by the written agreement.
No, I mean, this point is pretty clear by now, I believe, to Russia and China. I mean, especially looking at the age of the people who are leading these institutions. I mean, with Russia, you must make the point that they really wanted to believe the United States. In the 1990s, even the early 2000s, they wanted to believe that the word and the treaties can be trusted.
Yeah.
It's clear now because people even telling us that there was a lie that was never meant to be. So unfortunately, this changes, of course, what you can do with treaties. But on the other hand, it brings in a bit of reality of how you have to structure the relationship, right?
Right. Well, there's also this gets back to the narrative the public is fed is used to justify breaking the law.
Yep.
Now, the U.S. Constitution is very explicit that the president cannot just go out and start a war, start killing, engaging in military operations with other countries just because he wants to, which has been the case now for, since we started putting troops into Vietnam.
Yep.
Now, those that try to argue that, oh, well, the president needs to be free because what happens if China attacks Taiwan? It's urgent. We gotta have the president be able to react. And I'd go, whoa. Let's dispense with all this Hollywood nonsense about, you be able to press a button and all of a sudden you get an immediate military response. If, quote, China invaded Taiwan, that's absolutely the kind of thing you should have the U.S. Congress decide is, are we willing to send our sons, mostly sons and some daughters, to die in a war with China over particular land? And if the people said no, the president shouldn't have the power to go out and carry out any military action. I spent 23 years scripting counterterrorism exercises for, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and other special operations units. And you don't rarely do you get a situation in which there's an immediate action and the U.S. has to respond, within minutes or seconds. No, that's not how it works. It even takes, even like when we had the Somali pirates that captured the Maersk, Alabama, and you had the Captain Phillips is taken hostage. It still took 2-3 days to get the Navy SEALs out there. So don't tell me you don't have time to make a decision. And this is where, they tried to, after 9/11, they tried to get around the issue of going to Congress by creating a document. It was called AUMF, the Authorization for the Use of Military Force. And it tried to lay out circumstances in which the president, and this was a step at least in the right direction, to put a document in front, but the Congress never approved it to my knowledge. But it should have been congressionally approved that would say, okay, if you get confronted with a terrorist incident that requires a short fuse, you can use this kind of military force. But what's happening is the way the media is being used, it's to create in the minds of the average American that immediate action is appropriate. We've seen this. I don't know if you're familiar with the television show 24 that featured actor Kiefer Sutherland. He was the son of Donald Sutherland. But inevitably, in like every episode, there'd be like the ticking time bomb.
Ah,
And you had to torture the person in order to get the information. The means justifies the end kind of thing. That's the message that gets printed out there. And I even heard Justice Scalia, this was back, oh my God, 2004, 2005. I used to I used to be friends with an author by the name of Vince Flynn. And Vince had written a number of these books, and they always had sort of the ticking time bomb scenario in them. And here was Justice Scalia justifying torture based upon, because it was what Vince Flynn was writing and what he saw on 24. And it's like, really? You're being that manipulated by these social media narratives. So that, there is great power. You hold great power in your hands by virtue of being able to broadcast what you do, but you're not out there playing games trying to manipulate public opinion. You are trying to change it.
And that brings us back to our original topic, right? The abilities that we have now through the internet, and also by going around, largely, not completely, but largely around the middlemen, around the newspaper editors and so on, that would take out things, and by using platforms. And maybe this is one of the greatest values of Google is of YouTube, is not even the show, the ability to upload videos, it's their willingness to then distribute it, right? Because YouTube has a 2.5 billion user base. A third of the planet uses YouTube in order to get information one way or another, and it is being distributed, and that's just unbeatable. No other thing rivals this kind of open seed where the message in a bottle can reach anyone potentially. So that is something that needs to be protected. On the other hand, it is something that we somehow need to find alternatives to, I suppose. And you're finding alternatives, right? You're writing on your own homepage. What are the ways that you found in order to kind of still provide the public with your analysis?
Well, I do sonar21.com. That's my main blog, but I set up a Substack and also a Patreon. So, you try to multiply that you're not locked into just one platform. I do have a channel where I appear on YouTube once a week called Countercurrents. But I also, as I mentioned, I'm friends with the owner of BitChute. And Jeffrey is... he's a great, I'll call him a global patriot. He's really standing up for the principle of free speech around the world, not just in one location. And he's very, very sincere about this. So when I run into people like him, it gives me hope for the future. Because the kind of work I can do today on the internet, unclassified, exceeds anything I was able to do when I was in CIA.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the impression that CIA's got all these great databases. And in fact, if you recall during the presidency of George W. Bush, when they had the disaster in New Orleans with the hurricane, there was his director of FEMA was a guy named Brown, I believe. And they start calling him, heck of a job, Brown. So this was about 2010, and I was scripting one of these counterterrorism exercises. And we went on, I logged on to what they call the SIPRnet. It's a secret. So they got different, you got a secret internet, and you got a top secret internet, and then you have a compartmented information internet. Now they don't, you can't connect. If depending on your clearances, you can get access to each of those, but they are basically separate. They're not combined. So anyway, I said we needed to get the current name of the director of FEMA. So we log into this secret database, and who do they show as the director of FEMA? Heck of a job, Brown. He had been gone for 4 years, but there he was, right in the database. So you go, really?
Um, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's slightly different, but in a similar vein, there's a couple of services on the internet at the moment that try to sell like stuff that they call like master class or whatnot, where you can learn from experts and da 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 da. And then actually you look at it and you can get all of this not for like $1,200 a year, but for free on YouTube because you have
Yeah,
the greatest experts who talk for free. All you need to do is to like pick and choose. So the only thing
exactly.
these people do is to create a menu for you, which is basically a syllabus, which is what universities have been doing forever. But anyhow, point being that the openness of the big platforms is so huge. The only problem is finding and combining the right things, but
Right.
not that it's not there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in a sense, this is our job, isn't it? It's like finding and combining and then presenting and telling people, look, we recommend to look at it in this way and to use these and these sources in order to understand what's going on.
Well, yeah. See, I have a way of thinking about problems that
Mm.
to me it seems natural, and I expect everybody to do it, but I find out sometimes I'm the only one thinking that way.
Yep.
The example was what I wrote up 2 days ago about why Iran has ample reason to hate America, but doesn't. And going over the history since, going to 1953 of how the way the United States portrays the relationship is that we're always the aggrieved victim. We've never done here we are minding our own business, and those damn Iranians storm our embassy for no good reason and brutalize our people.
Yeah, like October 7th, right? Out of the
Yeah.
blue, it was live and let live, peace and harmony, and then pure evil strikes. Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, we have some pieces of information that might be important here.
Yeah. So that's where I always turn it around and say, let's try to go to the data. And in fact, early on in as this conflict with Venezuela was coming to a head, I had said mistakenly, I was wrong. I said, well, could it be that the Trump administration's doing this because they're going to attack Iran and they want to have an alternative source of oil? But I had not really looked into how much oil was Venezuela able to take out of the ground and refine, et cetera. And when I started looking into that, I realized this wasn't about oil at all. I mean, Venezuela, in terms of global production, accounts for about 0.6% of the oil that's produced. And the oil that it is producing, it's not like apple juice, it's like peanut butter. So trying to suck the peanut butter out of the ground and then get it cleaned up so it can be used is actually an expensive process. So, but when I went through and then started looking at the actual numbers of oil, and you realize that if Iran decides to shut the Strait of Hormuz, that's going to cut off 45% of the world's oil supply right there. That's a big threat. I mean, that should give everybody pause about why they don't want to have a war with Iran, because Iran most certainly can shutter the strait. And if they do that, much of the world is going to suffer a tremendous economic decline. Russia will be doing well, though, because, oil will be $150, $200 a barrel, and they'll be rolling in cash.
Yeah. China will be very unhappy. This is one of the reasons Iran wouldn't want to do it. I mean, Iran doesn't want to do it. It is really the last thing they would want to do because they know it will cost them dearly. It will cost their friends dearly. They will lose. I mean, Japan has a decent relationship with Iran. I mean, they don't.
Well, that's the thing to look at. If you look at Iranian production and Russian production and what that represents. In fact, I haven't actually looked at this number. So again, this is how my brain thinks. Let's look at the number, because if it turns out that exports from Iran and Russia account for about 80% of what China gets,
Yep.
Hey, China's not going to be affected that much if the Strait of Hormuz is cut off, because Iran can get the oil out not through the Strait of Hormuz, but south of that.
Yeah, yeah, no, this very important point. And just to bring it back, yeah, I guess our job is to take what's out there and what's available and to offer it in a new composition in order to give perspective to
Correct.
the other people who are also seeking and who are scratching their heads and who are wondering what can be done. So this is why we need an open internet, an open platform, and we need
Yes.
to rally for that. And thank you, Larry, for doing this, for all the time you have been doing it. Again, if people want to find you now, it's your blog, Sonar 21 on BitChute. So on BitChute, you're
Sonar 21
find
as
you?
well. Yeah, Sonar 21. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, Pascal, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I appreciate what you do because you reach out to so many different voices and points of view. It's important. People, they get, I won't necessarily say unbiased because each of us bring our own particular bias, but at least it's a conversation where people get to make up their own minds about what they heard.
Yeah, I keep using the image of the elephant, right? Nobody will ever see an elephant in its totality. You either see the front or the back or the sides or below or on top. You never see the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? And what I would like to do is to give as many snapshots as possible, to approach a reasonable way of understanding what's going on.
Certainly. That's a great idea.
Larry Johnson, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, my friend.